Why is it that we are trained from the moment we can hold a crayon to applaud the polished marble of a comfortable lie, yet we recoil in horror and confusion from the rough, jagged, and utterly mesmerizing texture of the truth? We live in a world that is obsessed with the veneer. We filter our faces, we manicure our lawns, and for centuries we have been told that art is meant to be a window into a perfected reality, a place where gods and goddesses lounge in eternal, smooth-skinned glory. We are conditioned to believe that mastery equates to smoothness, that the highest form of human expression is the one that hides the effort, hides the pain, and hides the grime. But there is a fierce, grimy, and wonderfully hostile counter-argument to this suffocation of the soul, and it comes to us through the hands and mind of a former wine merchant who decided, quite late in the game, that the entire history of Western culture was a stifling tuxedo that needed to be ripped apart and thrown into the mud. I am speaking of the French iconoclast Jean Dubuffet, a man who looked at the prestigious museums of Europe and saw nothing but a graveyard of suffocated ideas. If you are looking for pretty pictures to match your sofa, or if you are seeking a polite conversation about the nuances of shading and light, you should stop reading now, because Dubuffet is not here to comfort you. He is here to grab you by the collar and shove your face into the beautiful, chaotic dirt of existence. And in doing so, he offers us something far more valuable than beauty. He offers us the raw, unadulterated sensation of being alive. To understand the visual language of Dubuffet is to understand that he was fundamentally declaring war on the concept of talent. This is a crucial distinction that most people miss, and it is the key to unlocking the motivational power of his legacy. When we stand before the great masters of the Renaissance, we are meant to be awestruck by their dexterity, their ability to make paint look like velvet or flesh. We are meant to feel small in the presence of their divine gift. Dubuffet found this performative skill to be a cheap parlor trick, a barrier that stood between the viewer and the raw emotion of the creator. Now, before the pedants in the back row start raising their hands to point out that Dubuffet actually attended the Académie Julian in 1918, let us set the record straight immediately. Yes, he attended art school for 6 months, and then he quit. This is a vital detail because it proves that his rejection of academic technique was not born of ignorance. It was a deliberate, calculated divorce. He knew the rules, he saw the roadmap of success, and he burned the map. He spent decades oscillating between art and the family wine business, only fully committing to the canvas in his 40s, specifically in 1942. This false start is not a sign of failure. It is the evidence of a man who refused to create until he could find a way to do it that didn't feel like a lie. He was an intellectual masquerading as a savage, a bourgeois man who realized that the common man possessed a vision far clearer than the professor. When you look at the totality of his work, the first thing that assaults you is the materiality. This is not paint sitting politely on a canvas. This is earth. This is battle. Dubuffet realized that standard oil paint was too fluid, too obedient, too refined for the violence he wanted to express. It was a medium designed for flattery, for the glazes of the old masters. So he thickened it. He engaged in a culinary alchemy, mixing his pigments with sand, tar, gravel, coal dust, string, putty, and bitumen. He created a substance he called haute pâte, or high paste. This resulted in surfaces that are topographical maps of psychic distress. They are thick, crusty, and geological. He did not brush the paint on, he troweled it, he kneaded it, and he attacked it. He treated the canvas like a wall that needed to be plastered and then scratched. This technique, often referred to as grattage, involves scratching into the wet surface to reveal layers underneath, much like a vandal carving their initials into a park bench. There is a profound humility and a shocking arrogance in this choice of materials. By using dirt and sand, Dubuffet is telling us that the sublime is not found in the heavens, but in the gutter. He is forcing us to look at the ground. This texture creates a haptic experience. It bypasses the intellectual centers of the brain and goes straight to the fingertips. You want to touch these paintings even though you know they might cut you. They possess a physical gravity that standard paintings lack. They occupy space in the room like a heavy stone. This heaviness is deliberate. It reminds us that we are biological entities, bound to the earth, made of carbon and dust. It creates an oppressive, suffocating atmosphere that is simultaneously grounding. It is the visual equivalent of a heavy blanket, comforting in its weight but stifling in its heat. This heavy materiality dictates how he handles his subjects. Whether he is depicting a cow, a jazz musician, or a nude woman, the subject is flattened and crushed into this thick paste. There is no attempt at illusionistic space. The horizon line is often pushed all the way to the top of the frame, or eliminated entirely, creating a sensation of being walled in. This is not a window looking out, it is a wall blocking your path. The figures are often grotesque, spread out like roadkill, their limbs splayed in awkward, impossible angles. But do not mistake this for incompetence. This is a sophisticated rejection of the Greek ideal. In his famous series involving the female body, he took the most sacred subject in art history, the female nude, and turned it into a landscape of flesh. He rejected the smooth curves of the pin-up or the goddess. Instead, he gave us the body as a geography of wrinkles, scars, hair, and fluids. He flattened the form until it looked like a map of a territory, rather than a person. This approach is confronting, and yes, it has been criticized as aggressive, but we must understand the philosophical underpinning. Dubuffet is forcing us to look at the human animal without the filter of idealism. He suggests that our bodies are not temples, but biological machines, messy and prone to decay, and that there is a profound, terrifying beauty in that reality. By removing the specific features that make a portrait look like someone, he achieves a universal archetype. These are not specific people. They are effigies of humanity. They are grotesque because we are grotesque. We are sacks of anxieties and desires, and Dubuffet paints the inside of the mind as much as the outside of the body. He turns the figure into a primitive totem, scrawling eyes and mouths with the simplistic fury of a caveman or a toddler. This leads us to the crucial, often misunderstood concept of art brut. We must be precise here to avoid the wrath of the historians. Dubuffet did not make art brut. He collected it, he theorized it, and he championed it. He coined the term to describe the raw, uncooked art created by people outside the cultural system, the mentally ill, the incarcerated, the psychic mediums, and the uneducated loners. He was heavily influenced by the book Artistry of the Mentally Ill by Hans Prinzhorn. Dubuffet believed that these creators were the only true artists because they created from a place of pure necessity, untouched by the desire for fame or the rules of the academy. They were hallucinating, they were screaming, they were exorcising demons. Dubuffet's own work is not art brut because he was a self-aware, culturally educated man choosing to mimic that rawness. His work is a simulation of that freedom, a highly sophisticated attempt to unlearn his own culture. He wanted to bypass the intellect and go straight to the nerves. This is why his works often look bad to the uninitiated eye. They are deliberately de-skilled. He creates a visual language that stutters and screams rather than sings. He uses colors that are muddy and earthen, browns, grays, ochres, blacks, colors that remind us of the soil and the pavement. When he does use bright color, it is often jarring and acidic, used not to harmonize, but to disrupt. The everyman is the hero of Dubuffet's universe. He was not interested in kings, generals, or celebrities. He was interested in the commuter on the metro, the man in the gray suit, the anonymous face in the crowd. He celebrated the banality of existence. In his portraits, he stripped the subject of individual psychology and replaced it with a generic, vibrant energy. The heads are often shaped like potatoes or balloons, the features carved rudely into the paste. The teeth are often depicted as a jagged row of pebbles, giving the figures a maniacal skeletal grin. This is not mockery, it is a stripping away of the mask. Dubuffet believed that our social personalities are fake, and that the real human spirit is a chaotic, untamed force that lives beneath the surface. By distorting the face, he reveals the spirit. He shows us the grimace beneath the smile. He validates the confusion and the ugliness that we all feel but are too polite to show. It is impossible to discuss Dubuffet without addressing the seismic shift that occurred in his work around 1962, leading to the Orloop cycle. This is where the mud and earth gave way to the clean, synthetic line. Yet the madness remained. The legend, and it is a useful one, even if apocryphal details vary, is that this style began with doodles made in red and blue ballpoint pen while he was on the telephone. Whether this is strictly true or a curated myth, it speaks to the core of his philosophy. that the mind, when left to wander, produces truer forms than the focused intellect. The hour loop style is characterized by interlocking cells, striped with parallel lines, hatching, usually restricted to a palette of red, blue, white, and black. But look closer. This is not just a doodle, it is a worldview. In these works, the distinction between the object and the space around it disappears. A person is made of the same cellular structures as the chair they sit on, the tree behind them, and the sky above them. It is a unified field of existence. It is a visual representation of the idea that reality is a continuous, vibrating fabric. The hatching creates a restless, nervous energy. It makes the eye vibrate. It denies the eye a place to rest. This cycle eventually exploded off the canvas and into 3 dimensions. Dubuffet began using modern industrial materials like polystyrene and epoxy resin to build massive sculptures and inhabitable environments. He created caves, towers, and grottos that you could walk inside. This was the ultimate realization of his goal, to place the viewer inside the painting. In works like the Closerie Falbala or the Villa Falbala, the viewer is completely surrounded by the hour loop logic. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, everything is a doodle. It is disorienting. It disrupts your sense of depth and balance. It forces you to abandon the logic of the real world and surrender to the logic of the artist's mind. It is a non-place, a mental space made physical. We must also look at his texturologies and materiologies to fully grasp his obsession with the ground. In these series, he abandons the figure entirely. These are paintings of nothing but texture. They look like close-up photographs of soil, asphalt, or the side of an old wall. They are all-over compositions that have no center of attention. This was a radical move. He was telling us that the dirt we walk on is as worthy of contemplation as a religious icon. It is a pantheistic vision where the divine is found in the dust. These works are meditative, but not in a peaceful Zen garden way. They are meditative in a gritty, existential way. They force you to confront the void, the sheer vastness of the material world that is indifferent to human suffering. By eliminating the horizon and the figure, Dubuffet creates a visual silence that is deafening. What makes Dubuffet's visual language so accessible, despite its intellectual rigor, is its profound connection to childhood. We have all drawn like Dubuffet. Before we were taught about vanishing points and color wheels, we drew circle heads with stick legs. We drew houses that were squares with triangles on top. We drew with a direct connection between our hand and our mind. Dubuffet spent his entire adult life trying to get back to that state of grace. He studied the drawings of children not to mock them, but to learn from them. He realized that children use a system of signs, a circle for a sun, a zigzag for grass, that is far more effective at communicating the idea of a thing than a photorealistic rendering. His art is a sophisticated recovery of that lost innocence, but it is an innocence tempered by the cynicism and trauma of the adult world. It is the child's drawing viewed through the eyes of a man who has seen the collapse of civilization. It is a second naivety, a deliberate choice to be simple in a complex world. The colors he employs in his later period are rarely naturalistic. They are artificial, synthetic. He uses high-key blues and reds that look like plastic or neon. This shift reflects the changing world around him, from the rubble of 1945 to the consumerist boom of the 60s and 70s. Yet even with these bright colors, the feeling is never cheerful in the Disney sense. It is manic. It is the color of advertising repurposed to create a sense of disorientation. The white spaces in his hour loop works are not empty. They are charged with light, acting as a stark background against which the chaotic lines dance. The name itself, hour loop, is a neologism, a made-up word that combines loop, wolf, loop, magnifying glass, and entourloupe, a dirty trick or swindle. This linguistic playfulness is essential. He is telling us that language, like art, is a game, a construct that can be twisted and broken. Let's be honest about the reaction his work provokes. Many people find it ugly. They look at his clumpy, distorted figures and say, "My kid could do that." Dubuffet would reply, "I hope so." He would consider that the highest compliment. The fact that it provokes irritation is part of its function. Art that sits quietly on the wall and matches the curtains is decoration. Art that makes you angry, that confuses you, that makes you question the sanity of the maker. That is art that is doing its job. Dubuffet wants to irritate you. He wants to disrupt your complacency. He wants you to ask why you think smooth skin is beautiful and wrinkled skin is ugly. He wants to challenge your definitions of competence. He is poking you in the eye to make you see. The assemblages are another critical component of his visual arsenal that we cannot ignore. He would cut up his own paintings and glue them back together in new configurations. He would take scraps of paper, dried leaves and, yes, even butterfly wings, in a series that horrifies some and delights others, and assemble them into figures. This technique emphasizes the fragmentary nature of our perception. We do not see the world as a whole. We see it in bits and pieces, in glimpses and fragments. Dubuffet's collages mimic this cognitive process. They are stitched together like Frankenstein's monster. This visible stitching, the seams and the glue, are left exposed. He does not hide the labor. He wants you to see that the image is a construction, a lie made of paper and glue, but a lie that reveals a truth. This method also speaks to his sustainability of spirit. Nothing is wasted. Old ideas, ruined paintings, scraps of garbage, everything can be repurposed into something alive. There is also a profound humor in his work, though it is a dark, gritty humor. The cows with their goofy expressions, the men with their hats perched absurdly on their potato heads, there is a sense of the absurd that links him to the pataphysics of Alfred Jarry. Dubuffet recognizes that existence is ridiculous. We take ourselves so seriously, with our jobs and our titles and our wars, but in the end we are just biology scrawling on the surface of a rock floating in space. His art is a cosmic joke. It laughs at the pretensions of the powerful. It is the court jester who is the only one allowed to tell the king he is naked. This humor makes the heavy materiality palatable. It adds a layer of humanity to the mud. Without this humor, the work might be too bleak to bear. With it, the bleakness becomes a shared existential shrug, a way of saying, we are all in this mess together. His use of perspective is another key element of his anti-cultural warfare. In traditional Western art, perspective is a tool of control. It places the viewer in a specific spot and organizes the world for their consumption. It is rational, mathematical, and hierarchical. Dubuffet throws this out the window. He uses a flattened, stacked perspective that is often called vertical perspective. Objects that are supposed to be far away are simply placed higher up on the canvas, not made smaller. This destroys the illusion of depth and asserts the reality of the picture plane. It is a rejection of the lie that a painting is a window. Dubuffet insists that a painting is a thing, an object in the room with you. This honesty is refreshing. He is not trying to trick you. He is presenting you with a slab of reality. By denying you the illusion of depth, he forces you to engage with the surface, with the stuff of the painting. Furthermore, we must discuss his relentless experimentation. He never stayed in one place. Just when the critics began to accept his mud paintings, he switched to the graphic doodles. When they accepted those, he moved on to the theaters of memory, complex collages that revisited his entire career. He was driven by a fear of being categorized. He believed that as soon as a style became recognized and accepted, it was dead. It had become culture. To remain alive, art must be in a constant state of revolution. It must constantly surprise and offend. This is a lesson in vitality. It teaches us that to be static is to die. We must constantly be shedding our skins, reinventing our language, and refusing to do what is expected of us. Dubuffet was an artist who ran away from his own success, continually sabotaging his marketability to preserve his integrity. There is a tremendous motivational power in this worldview for anyone who feels paralyzed by the need for perfection. Dubuffet teaches us that our flaws, our clumsiness, and our lack of training are not liabilities. They are our greatest assets. The professional artist learns to mask their trembling hand. Dubuffet celebrates the tremble. He suggests that when we try to be good, we are merely copying what has come before. But when we allow ourselves to be bad, when we embrace the accident and the mistake, we tap into a vein of originality that is entirely our own. He empowers the viewer to look at the cracks in the pavement and see a masterpiece. He empowers the amateur to pick up a pen and draw without fear of judgment. He tells the accountant, the teacher, and the bus driver that their vision of the world is just as valid as the vision of the curator. Consider the acoustic quality of his work. Dubuffet was also interested in experimental music, collaborating with Asger Jorn. His paintings often have a sonic quality. The busy, frenetic lines of the hour loop cycle buzz like a hive of bees or the static of a radio. The heavy, earthy paintings have a muffled, damp silence. He engages all the senses. He understood that vision is not isolated. It is connected to hearing, touch, and even taste. When he painted a banquet, he wanted it to look appetizingly gross, a feast of gluttony that you could smell. This multi-sensory approach breaks down the sterile distance of the museum experience. You do not just look at a Dubuffet, you encounter it. In the final analysis, the visual legacy of Jean Dubuffet is a testament to the power of the raw over the cooked. We live in a society that is overcooked. Everything is processed, packaged, and sanitized. Dubuffet serves us the raw meat. He reminds us that beneath the pavement, there is soil. Beneath the suit, there is a naked, shivering animal. Beneath the polite conversation, there is a scream. His art is a tool for stripping away the layers of conditioning that society places upon us. It is a visual philosophy of liberation. He challenges us to find beauty in the gutter. He challenges us to look at the crumbling wall and see a galaxy. He challenges us to respect the art of the insane and the child as much as the art of the professor. He is a difficult, prickly, arrogant guide, but he leads us to a place of profound freedom. He tells us that we do not need permission to create. We do not need a degree to understand art. We only need eyes and a gut. He hands us a lump of mud and tells us it is gold, and if we look with the right kind of eyes, we realize he is right. He forces us to question the authority of taste. Who decided that a marble statue is better than a twisted root? Who decided that a symphony is better than the rhythm of a train on the tracks? Dubuffet rejects the hierarchy. He levels the playing field. In his world, everything is interesting, everything is alive, and everything is worthy of attention if you have the courage to look at it without prejudice. So, the next time you see a crack in the sidewalk, or a stain on the wall that looks like a face, or a child drawing a monster with 3 eyes, do not look away, lean in. That is the real stuff. That is the energy that drives the universe. That is the revealing art of Jean Dubuffet. And it is waiting there to remind you that you are alive, you are messy, and you are free. Do not let the tuxedo of culture suffocate you. Rip it off and play in the mud. The view is much better from down there. The mistake you are afraid to make is likely the most interesting thing you have to offer the world. Embrace the smudge, the blot, and the wobble. That is where the life is.